right, David, we got to the final person.
Countdown.
That wrote in questions, and he wrote a whopping 30 questions for us.
We might have to do this.
No. We're gonna
round.
go. We're doing it lightning round. If we go a little longer, then okay. But here we go. Thad wrote in. Our good old friend, Uncle Daddy Thad wrote in, David. And
I don't like
said,
that you call him that.
I'm going to call him that anyway because it makes you uncomfortable. No, I'm joking. But anyway, Uncle Daddy Thad wrote in, and he says, for the first question, here we go. You ready, David?
Yes.
All right, boxers or briefs?
Briefs.
Okay, same. I'm a briefs man, and I'm a fat guy. It's hard to find boxers that fit, to be quite frank. So, yeah. I wanted to go on a whole diatribe when I read that, but I'm going to keep going because we got to do lightning round. So.
You know what? Sorry. I was
going to say, what?
I was momentarily, I don't know why I said briefs. I was momentarily thinking of something else. Sorry. Boxers.
Okay.
Boxers. I had a weird moment where my brain like switched the words around. They like meant the opposite thing in my head for some reason.
Well, unfortunately, the first answer is the correct one, or at least the one that's going to be written in the history books, David. So
I don't really care.
All right, you go boxers, I go briefs. All right, what? Moving on. Number
You're
2.
a little country, I'm a little rock and roll.
Number 2. That says, "Where is the Ark of the Covenant hidden?" Ooh, I don't know.
It's definitely in the Vatican's basement.
Really? Along with all the skeletons of children, probably. So, anyway.
Along with all those, like, probably, all that Nazi, the relics of the Nazi conquests of World War II.
Yeah. No, yeah, but correct.
Yeah! Nazis!
Oh, God. We're going to clip that out and be like in a random compilation one day. All right, so number 3, what is David's opinion on Taylor Swift's new album? This is going to be a nice short one.
Haven't listened to it.
Okay, moving on. Number 4, who would win in a hand-to-hand combat battle between Klaus Schwab versus Alex Jones?
Alex Jones.
Yeah, hands down. Have you seen that guy? He's also cut a lot of weight off too. So, and he looks a lot more scary too. So,
Klaus Schwab is,
he's a pasty old German guy.
Shall we say a little on the fruity side?
Yep, and he echoes some old Germanic feelings that make people uncomfortable as well. So, for those who don't know who Klaus Schwab is, just Google him and just read every single article that comes after that.
Yeah.
Maybe don't read all the ones about Alex Jones because a lot of them are, you know. Anyway, number 5. If you could be a dog, what dog would you be? I didn't know you wrote that. If I were a dog?
Oh boy.
I don't know. What would you be? Not what do you want to be?
If I could be a dog, I want to be Snoopy. Because he's the coolest dog there is.
God, I'm trying to think of a cartoon dog now. Man, David, you took the best one. I don't want to be Odie. He's a retarded dog. God, I don't know. I wouldn't be an English bulldog.
You for sure don't want to be Old Yeller.
Neither do I want to be Old Yeller. I'm going to say NA for this question. I have no idea. Number 6, what is our assurance that we are saved, David?
Let's see. It's one of those things you just know. Because when you...
Yeah, you just know. I think
when you
when
you put your faith in Christ, the Holy Spirit comes inside of you and regenerates you and makes you into a new creation.
Kind of like Doctor Who.
And
not really, but you know.
Like when you are genuinely put your faith in Christ, when you believe in his death and resurrection, and you trust in the finished work of the cross, you are a new creation. There's no denying that. You're a different person. The Bible talks about us being sealed with the Holy Spirit until the day of redemption. So like the Holy Spirit is literally living inside of us, giving us that internal witness that we belong to Christ.
I'd agree with you. I think like the term blessed assurance as well. I think you nailed it on the head. I think it's just like once you know you're saved, you know you're saved. And yes, it's faith is an aspect of that, but for me personally, from what I've experienced, I would say it's you just know. And it's kind of what I was referring to earlier. Once you you kind of your mind is kind of easier to wrap your mind around some things in life that you weren't previously akin to, is what I would say. Not just spiritually, but just everyday stuff. Like I don't have worries that I'm going to die tomorrow, because if I do die, I know where I'm going. I don't have that fear or that anxiety or that unassuredness in my mind. It's assurance that I will be saved, that I am saved. So, yeah. All right, next question. What is Satan's biggest deception in our day and age? Ooh, this is a juicy one.
Oh, yeah.
I would have to say the biggest deception, it's identity. It's 100% tied to identity of people and what they think they are and what their foundation is in. I think that's the biggest deception, is questioning yourself in all aspects, gender, in all aspects as well. I think gender is the biggest one specifically. That's the deception of the day.
Yeah. It doesn't even have to be tied to a specific thing. For me, it's just like, yeah, Satan gets people by convincing them to put their identity in something like a movement, or an idea about who they are as a person or whatever.
Societal acceptance.
Yeah, something that isn't Christ.
Yeah, I mean, stuff that's fleeting, like politics and societal pressure and
money,
So I think that's the biggest deception. And mostly, I think also it distracts us from what we're truly meant to be. And that's the biggest deception right there, I would say. All right, next question. How long do we have until America as we know it is no more? David, you're the first on this guy.
Hopefully, hopefully we have a long time. Mm-hmm. Hopefully we manage to avoid certain destruction and are on a path towards restoration of what America was meant to be. Because I mean, as far as America as we know it being no more, it's almost like we were already basically there at one point.
Yeah, basically.
We were on the precipice, and it seems like there's been a shift in culture that it seems like for the moment that we may have just been, by the grace and mercy of God, stopped just short of dropping off the cliff edge and are turning back around.
I would say America has been through some incredibly dark times, even to the point right after the creation of America. I mean, the War of 1812 comes to my mind. I mean, deciding whether or not to support France in their current revolution at the time and all this kind of stuff. America was on the precipice right there. Like, they didn't know if they were going to live and if they were going to be destroyed and the British were going to come and, the empire was going to strike back, So there's that. There's also the Civil War. There's also some really dark economic times leading up to the Civil War, and even especially afterward during Ulysses S. Grant's presidency. There were some dark times. Like, imagine being at war with yourself in America, and then Sherman, especially after the very first battle, I would say, of the Civil War, leading up to that, people thought it would be a show. No, it wasn't. It was blood and guts, and it was the first, in quotes. No, I could be wrong. I don't know if that or World War I was the first modern war, in quotes. I think the Mexican-American War was. I could be wrong, but correct me if I'm wrong, audience. But anyway, you had that leading up to it, and then Sherman's reign and burning of countless towns and raping of women, all this kind of stuff really just took the Civil War, that and the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. I don't think people even knew America was going to stay as it was after that. I mean, they knew that politically it was won. The war was won as well, but the culture didn't come to that until later. So America's been through some dark ass times. I mean, not even mentioning World War One and Two. And now where we're at, I feel like it was to the point of we were going to be overtaken, say, in 20 years. I feel like, or even, heck, even the end times were probably in sight. And for a lot of people, last year probably. But I think America, I'd say a nice solid 200 more years. That's what my prediction would be.
200 more years.
200 more years, and we still would be short of the Roman Empire.
When you said America's been through some dark ass times, like in that moment,
yeah. Tell me, David, what came to your mind when I said dark ass times in America?
In that moment, I wanted to be like, you know what else America's been through? America's been through some dank ass times. I restrained myself from doing that. I
appreciate you. I thank you that you gave me that grace, and I'm sorry I didn't give it to you during your flegatorious whatever word you said. You know? Okay, moving on. What is the exact date and time Jesus was returning? I don't know. Moving on. David, you have anything? Exact date and time Jesus is returning.
Exact date and time. Let's see. March 8th, 2056.
How old will you be, and how old will I be?
I don't know.
I think I'll be 57 in 2053. So what? Wait, what was the year? 58?
2056.
2056. That's two more. So I'd be 55. Ooh. No, I'd be 55 and 53. I don't know. I'd be in my 50s.
I'd be like 60 something.
Yeah. Spry young chicken.
So yeah.
That's your
date.
Prediction?
That's the date right there.
All right. March 8th.
You heard it first.
You've heard it here first, folks. All right, next. Who was Cain afraid of when God banished him out of the land?
Clearly the Neanderthals.
Yeah, and the crazy Neanderthals and the dinosaurs, you know?
Because, see, Adam was God's special creation of a new human species. Mm-hmm. Bear with me here.
Okay. Yeah.
So Adam represents the creation of us, Homo sapiens, right?
That's right.
But that doesn't mean there weren't other humans milling about who were outside the garden, who were hominids, but not of the same species. See what I'm saying? And you know what's very interesting about the Neanderthals is they died off not because they were like forcibly conquered or anything, but simply because Homo sapiens outbred them essentially, and they essentially lost what their unique genetic identifiers as their birth rates declined, and most of them ended up like just simply mating with Homo sapiens, which is why modern humans actually have a percentage of Neanderthal DNA. But those Neanderthal eventually just lost their genetic uniqueness, like what made them, and what survived of their genetic material was just incorporated into the genome of Homo sapiens. So it's very interesting when you think about it.
So the next obvious question is, if the humanoids were outside of the garden, where did they come from?
Well, I mean, obviously God created them the same way He's created everything, but but the creation of Adam and Eve was a special thing.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not saying that's what I believe. That's just a hypothesis.
I would equate that the a lot of people would associate the Nephilim being the children of the angels that fell from heaven. You know?
Yeah, but that was later.
But that was later. So I'm trying to think of what Cain was afraid of, because he went in the Bible to build a big ass city with surrounding by walls and his own little civilization. He's playing civilization in the Bible right there. You know?
Yeah, most.
So he's afraid of something.
Most of the most orthodox biblical answer that you could give is that by that time Adam and Eve already had plenty of descendants, and they had all had just sort of kind of migrated out into the world.
Yeah, because in terms of the bloodline that then connects to Jesus, it's through Seth as the bloodline, right?
Yes.
The first son of Adam.
Seth is not the first son of Adam.
I'm sorry, he's the third son of Adam, technically. But that's the son that starts the bloodline that leads to Jesus, right?
Well, it starts the bloodline that leads to everybody.
That's true. That's true
because Abel didn't have any children because he died.
He did.
And Cain's bloodline was wiped out in the flood.
That's true. I forgot about that.
So yeah,
huh?
The Seth is essentially would be the ancestor of all of humanity at this point.
Well, here's the thing: the daughters of Noah as well. If you want to get even more deeper in this, didn't they have some kind of bloodline? You could argue.
Well, you don't know
of the world. Of
you
Cain?
don't know. You don't know. They could have, but they could have not. And in the same way that we have. Modern humans have a little bit of Neanderthal DNA in us.
Okay.
That doesn't make us Neanderthal.
Yeah.
It doesn't make us descended from Neanderthal. It just happens to be that there was a little bit of interbreeding that happened. But the Neanderthal as a people are no more. There are no modern day people who are modern Neanderthals or modern Neanderthal descendants. We're all Homo sapiens.
Yeah.
So in the same way, it's like, sure, maybe Noah's sons' wives had a little bit of ancestry, a little bit of their genetic information that came from one of Cain's descendants. But that doesn't make the people, the children that they had, and that those children had children. That doesn't make those part of Cain's bloodline in any significant way. And honestly, it's all speculative because we have zero clue.
Yeah, we don't
what
know.
their ancestry was. They could have been from the line of Seth as well.
Yeah. Here's another interesting thing I've been pondering on as well, because going with Enoch was taken up from the Lord. He was a favorite of the Lord's, and he was taken from the earth, and he was taken at the prime ripe young sweet age of 365. When all of his sons and his dad and even Adam were in their 900s and 800 years olds. That's how old they grew up to be. So it makes me question, so was Adam around when his seventh son was around? Or was this 3,000 years later? Because if Adam died at 900 years old and Seth was still alive, say at 700 or whatever age he had him at, how long does that make the earth? How long does that make other stuff? How long does that connect to the 14,000 year, I think it's 20,000 year old earth theory?
Oh, believe me.
All that kind of stuff.
The calculations have already been done.
I'm sure they've been, but it just makes me think about and speculate just not how old the earth is necessarily, because who knows in terms of dating the earth, it could be, who knows the time between Genesis 1 and 2? Who knows the time between Genesis 2 and 3 and 4 and 5? Who knows how long that was? So it just makes me question the same with the lineage and the sons of Adam and the sons of Seth and so on and so forth. So how old was the earth when Noah and the flood came? Could have been, was it 1,000+ years? Was it 3 or 4 or 5,000+ years? I have no idea. It was definitely long enough for
who's to say?
Well, it also is fun to think about because what was the civilization like of that time that was involved with the Nephilim and the sons of Cain, and also what kind of civilization did they have? Were they technologically advanced? Look how long it's taken us to get the internet. That was 2,000 years. Well, no, that's wrong. But it's taken us from like the Roman Empire to now. If you think about that in a 2,000-year range, a lot has happened that's been recorded throughout history. But what wasn't recorded, what was lost back in the day, just makes me think. So, you got anything on that?
No.
No?
I was just, I mentioned the calculations have been done because they have been done. So if ever you want to scratch that curious itch, like of who was around for who and all that, according to the information found in the Bible.
Yeah.
It's already been all
done.
calculated.
Okay.
So you can find it.
I need to go listen to some more Chuck Missler, and you need to go listen to some more Timmy Alberino, because I think you've been listening to a ton of him. No, I'm joking. Have you?
I've listened to
Timothy Alberino? Because what you were telling me about Cain sounds like what he would talk about, like, a lot.
Yeah, I don't know.
Where did you
I've
hear
listened
all
to
that?
like 3 or 4
Of his, like,
podcasts of
interviews?
his.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. But anyway, let's move on. If you had to live in a movie, what movie would you live in, David?
A movie?
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
X-Men. That way there'd be mutants. I don't know.
Let's see.
What would be cool but also safe? Jurassic Park sounds kind of interesting, but that might be really dangerous. You could also pick a true, like, based on a real story movie. You just live in the real world.
What movie would I
what
want to
movie
live
would you
in?
want to live in? Ah, I got it. Blazing Saddles. Which is, if you look at it through a certain lens, it's kind of the real world anyway, especially in the ending. So, you know, I have no idea. There's so many to pick from. Okay. Shrek. And then I'll end it there. All right. What do you have any?
Oh.
The Smurfs movie.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'd have no idea.
Like maybe
Bedazzled, David. Yeah.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah, why not? Why not? Why not?
Why not?
Yeah, even though it like contradicts like scripture and everything. I mean, whatever. Oh, then that would be. Oh, then you would have to live in a world with where Jesus is of a different race, David. Oh no.
What?
I'm joking.
All right. Anyway, I don't think I can answer that question.
All right.
That's
Yeah, would you want to live in the Resident Evil films?
no.
No.
I'm good on that.
Okay.
I mean,
What's the movie with Final Fantasy Spirits Within? Why not, you know? Okay, I'm just gonna pick Starship Troopers and then we'll go forward. Why not?
why not?
It's in the future. We live now. So
yeah, I don't know. Like maybe I'd want to live in like some kind of like one of the less unsafe like Studio Ghibli movie worlds.
yeah, that's a good.
Just
that's a good
because,
answer.
you know, like
Yeah, Kiki's Delivery Service.
something idyllic and peaceful and
Yeah.
but I don't know.
Porco Rosso.
Well,
Well,
that's a little less
that's
idyllic.
That's also got a lot of baggage. He's a pig, so why?
Yeah, like
know.
I said, a little less idyllic.
Okay, I'm gonna go Kiki's Delivery Service. That'll be my pick.
Yeah, that's a great.
Yeah, let's do that.
Or that or Totoro.
Totoro's nice.
Yeah.
So
No. Yeah.
yeah. Well, speaking of Totoro, what illegal animal would you have as a pet?
Peanut the squirrel.
Yeah, I'd go with a flying squirrel. I think that would be fun to have. I just need a really large ceiling, a large enough space above my head for it to fly around. All right, next one. Did we really land on the moon, David?
Short answer, yes.
Yeah, short answer, yes.
Long answer, there's
Questions.
I mean,
Well,
there's I wouldn't say there's questions.
I try to avoid that part of Twitter when I go on there,
Yeah.
especially when they recommend videos like that. I'm like,
I wouldn't say there's questions so much as just there's people's natural inclination, which I totally understand,
Totally.
to question authority.
Yeah, totally. I feel like there's a time and place for all of that. And I don't know if necessarily the moon landing is, I mean, you definitely want to question authority. Why not? But I just think it's funny how people just go so deep down that hole.
Yeah.
Like, oh, President Nixon, he called him on the phone. You can't get a telephone pole out in the moon. Really, guys?
Ever heard of a radio?
Ever heard of a radio? Ever heard of like
a radio?
What? Like, come on. You guys are just, oh God. So
yeah, so
there's some dumb stuff that involves
the things like flat earth, things like fake moon landing stuff. It's like it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Like I totally get people wanting to disbelieve like what are perceived as like authority figures and what are perceived as like official sources of information. I get that, believe me. But like disbelieving the moon landing or believing like the earth is flat, stuff like that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
And also it doesn't make any sense because, in terms of it being fake, because we went to the moon later on. Other countries did as well. So like, what's going on? Why are there questions? I don't know. Maybe I'm just ignorant on the topic of anti-moon landing theory, but I think we did. That's my answer. Yes, we did. So, are birds real, David?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, I think some of them are fake. They're fakers. Next question. What is the source to David's musical powers? Wow, I did not know that was going to be in here. Okay. Well, I would answer that question by saying that he is a spiritual gift of creativity. Then, you know what they say when you make music and when you play music, it's one of the most hardest things for the brain to do ever, like in your life. That's one of the most hardest things for a brain to, like a human brain to comprehend, is to create music. And David, I feel like you got a brain that's a lot bigger than mine, and you can actually play an instrument. Man, I'm getting a little tired, but yeah, I think you got a nice spiritual gift. What do you think?
I'm getting a little tired. I was gonna come up with a really flippant, snarky answer, but it didn't come to me. But yeah, it's one of those things. Like, yeah, it's just something that God put in me. Like, he created all of us with certain gifts and abilities, and once you find out what those are, and you're able to use those to basically advance the kingdom. It's quite the honor.
Yeah. All right, next one. Is it true that Snarp Fangle accepts funds from USAID? I can resoundingly say, no, we don't, because they've never approached me, and I would say no anyway.
Well, you may not accept funds from USAID.
David?
But me, on the other hand.
What? Oh, I see what's going on here. I'll handle the audio, Jake. You take care of the video side of things. All right, next question. Are we living in a simulation?
Yeah, it's called real life.
I have the same answer. All right, what is the difference between sin and iniquities? I honestly, and I feel bad, but I honestly don't remember and don't know. Honestly. I guess I'll pass it over to you, David, but iniquities. God, it's been so long since I've seen that word and associated with the Bible, which I feel bad about saying. But one is one you definitely cause in yourself. Maybe the other one could be the effects that sin has on you. I don't know. Or maybe iniquities are our iniquities of being human. I don't know. That's all I really have. But David's researching some things at the moment.
Let me.
Yeah, he's looking.
I want to get into. I'm still scrolling through the Old Testament. I'm trying to get to the New Testament because I want to contrast it with with a specific word.
Okay.
So,
because iniquities, isn't that from a certain translation, or is that in multiple translations? Or, well, that's kind of a broad question, but is it only in King James, or is it in the others as well?
Well, let's see.
Because I know, like, for example, the verse in King James where it says, "I have mansions for you in heaven," that's specifically just in King James. There's no other translation that I can think of that has that term mansions in it. And we all know King James isn't exactly super incredibly, I would say, completely accurate to the Greek and the Hebrew translation. So, anyway, that's just an example. But iniquities, that might be just referring to something different.
Well, yeah, iniquity is in more than just the King James, but it's definitely in the King James more than it is in modern translations, just because iniquity is kind of a more old-fashioned word. The idea, I did just a quick word search of iniquity in the King James and the New Testament and what Greek words were associated with it. And it seems to be that there's a few different words, but it seems to be they all have to do with the idea of law breaking or lawlessness. And then the word sin in the New Testament is most often represented by the word hamartia, which specifically means to miss the mark or to fall short of a standard.
That sounds very Greek, that word. Hamartia? Hamartia. Okay. Huh.
So the idea of that word, which is the most, I can't remember if it's the only Greek word that's rendered sin, but it's by far the most common one. The idea of that word is that there is a target that you're shooting for, like if you're an archer, and you missed it. So the idea of sin in the sense of the Greek word of that particular Greek word is that there's a standard and you fell short of it.
Okay. Gotcha. And then sin.
And then iniquity.
Oh, that's okay. Sorry.
Seems to be iniquity. There's a couple different words that I found just from a quick search that are rendered iniquity in the King James, and they're different words, but they all seem to kind of revolve around the same general idea of lawlessness or breaking the law. So
interesting. Okay, I'm gonna leave it there then. I think we'll come back to that next time, Thad. We have you on, Thad, if you're listening. So, all right, 19, getting a little lighter. What was the best pop band in the 90s? Ooh. Michael W. Smith.
Best pop band in the 90s?
The 90s. Okay, Sobia, tell us through the ether. Or Angela. Maybe Angie will let us know.
That's a hard 90s. Question because
Enya. No, she's not pop.
The stuff from the 90s that I like is not pop.
It's not pop. Yeah. So let's just settle it by just saying Smash Mouth, David.
Gonna go with no, but sure, why not?
If you ever heard of Walking on the Sun, the Southern folk version, if you go and type that in, like Southern version of Walking on the Sun, or
yes,
the folk version.
I've heard it.
Legit one of the best reimaginings of a song. Legit. So good.
It's a little cringy for me.
Yeah, I understand, but it's pretty good. Anyway, you got to be in the right headspace for it. And for some reason that day I was, so. Anyway, what does the beast of the land and the beast of the sea represent in the book of Revelation, I was always confused by this aspect of Revelation where there was the beast of the that came out of the sea, and then there's the beast that's in the land. I'm guessing one of them is the devil, and the other one, I don't really. I've been doing research on Revelation the last year as well, so I don't remember. Again, I'm gonna have to go watch some Chuckle Missler sermons on YouTube, but. Yeah, it's interesting how it says two beasts. And then, well, wait, one of the Antichrist, David? Or is that totally separate? Because in Revelation, they talk about a false prophet in the city of Babylon. And I think that is the Antichrist.
Okay. So the beast out of the sea is, so where this, I mean, there's a million different ways
you can. Nerdy biblical talk here.
Okay, there's a million different ways you could interpret the book of Revelation. But if you're looking at it through what's kind of most common in evangelical Christianity, you're like the more common interpretations of it. The first beast represents the Antichrist, and then the second beast represents the false prophet who
that was it.
Basically speaks and acts on behalf of the Antichrist.
Yeah, okay. Gotcha. That was it. All right, next. Why did the CIA write the song Winds of Change by the Scorpions in 1990? Well, Thad, I think we know what your favorite pop band of the 90s was.
The Scorpions were not a 90s band.
I know. I'm just...
But anyway, that's the thing I Googled and I learned something.
Okay, gotcha.
That I didn't know about. There is actually a conspiracy theory out there that the CIA wrote Winds of Change, the song, to basically provide the sort of the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, to destabilize the Soviet Union.
Huh. I've never heard of this at all.
So basically,
interesting.
So do you know what the band Scorpions is?
I'll be honest, I don't.
Scorpions is the band that wrote Rock You Like a Hurricane.
Oh, okay.
So they're a German band, like a German hard rock band. But they wrote Winds of Change was like was kind of like a softer sort of like a ballad that they wrote, and it was essentially about the situation. It was essentially about the situation that had come about as a result of the Cold War. The song is like basically kind of like about people living in Soviet countries or living in Russia or living in Soviet controlled territories who are, yearning for freedom, and the winds of change that the song are referring to is the sort of the socio-political climate of the time that eventually led to the fall of the Berlin Wall and the collapse of the Soviet Union. And so there's actually a conspiracy theory out there, and somebody actually did even a documentary series about it too.
Really?
There is actually a conspiracy theory out there that in order to ensure that the Soviet Union fell, the CIA actually wrote this song and made sure it was like a hit in order to manipulate the political climate or the social climate to essentially influence the culture of people in Soviet controlled territories to to essentially give up on the idea of the Soviet domination, basically. Yeah, it's very strange.
I need to Google some of this. That sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird, bonkers conspiracy theory, but
It's one of those
It's
safer ones you could probably explore.
it's actually a legit thing that somebody actually believes, and did like I think he even wrote a book on it.
Dang. Well, people also, Devil's Advocate, also wrote books about the fake moon landing, apparently.
Yeah.
So, but I'm just saying, I think that sounds really cool. I do want to bring up really quick. There's a YouTube channel called FD Signifier who talks about music a lot. And he has a video called Exposing Hip Hop's Original Industry Plants. Kinda. And it was randomly recommended to me one day as I was watching Dark Souls videos, of all things. And I watched it. And even though he doesn't really get into like industry plants and quote, and if it's a true thing or not, he explores the concept and does have an example that's absolutely an industry plant, kinda. So I'd recommend it. FD Signifier, Exposing Hip Hop's Original Industry Plants, kinda. Go look that video up. It's really interesting. It is an hour long. It's kind of long, but it's a fun watch. So I would recommend that. All right. David, here we go. Is David Hasselhoff the next president of the United States? No.
He's got to wait his turn after J.D. Vance.
Dude, Hasselhoff will be like in his 70s at that point. So, dang. Anyway, what was the thorn in Apostle Paul's flesh? Well, if you read the memes online, it was SpongeBob in the prison with him. That's probably what I would say.
No. So
I know, I'm joking.
A lot of people believe that the thorn in Paul's flesh that he talks about was sickness, like a disease of some kind. And so there's this idea that God allowed Satan to put some kind of disease on him that he cried out for healing from, but God said no, so that Paul wouldn't get too big for his britches. I personally think that it wasn't a disease, but that it was that it was a messenger from Satan, as it actually uses those words in the text. So I believe it was the attacks that he was facing, the spiritual attacks that he was facing, in opposition to all of the good he was doing in his ministry.
That's pretty interesting. I want to do more research of the significance of that, as well as the significance of Peter, James, and John going up to Mount Hermon. I feel like there's a big deep dive you could do with those three of why they were there. I mean, Jesus picked them, obviously.
Well, they were the inner circle.
Inner circle, yeah. But like, there's a lot you could go into it, but I want to save it for later. I think that'd be fun. So anyway, next one. Is The Simpsons a psyop? Kinda is what I would say. I feel like the creator of The Simpsons and the writers in the writer's room, they started in the 90s. I feel like
they started in the 80s.
Oh, so was it 80s? I don't watch Simpsons, so I don't know.
They started in like 88 or 87.
Dang.
I want to say, let me look that up just to make sure.
Interesting. Well,
they actually started off, The Simpsons actually came from short, like,
David,
programs that were on the Tracy Ullman show, if you can believe it.
Okay, I remember hearing something about that. But David, we don't need to deep dive into this.
So the first episode of The Simpsons, I'm looking at
okay, I'm just kidding.
The first episode of The Simpsons is actually a Christmas episode.
Interesting.
1989.
89. Interesting. Well, I think over the years,
December 17th, 1989. So that's like,
I feel like
2 months after I was born.
If Simpsons is a psyop, then South Park is absolutely not a psyop. like confirmed not a psyop, because South Park, if it was, they hide it incredibly well. Like incredibly well. However, it is funny if you deep dive into like what the Simpsons predict and what's come true. I would guess. I have no idea.
I mean, they're a psyop in the sense that,
They suck.
yeah, that's
Yep,
exactly.
that's why.
Yeah, that it used to be quite funny. Now it is not. It is not nearly as funny now. Same with Family Guy.
Yeah.
I was an enjoyer of Family Guy back in the day.
There's some great first episodes. From what I hear.
But yeah, occasionally I'll happen to catch a clip of like a modern Family Guy episode, and I'm just like, what is this?
There has been some funny modern stuff I see clipped out every once in a while that is genuinely gives me a good laugh. But anyway, moving on. Speaking of deep, how did sin birth in Lucifer's heart in heaven? Man, that's one heck of a question. Sin birth in Lucifer's heart while in heaven.
Well, if you look in Ezekiel, where he has the lament over the king of Tyre, which many people believe is also talking about the fall of Satan. It mentions that his downfall was his own beauty, essentially. Because if you read that, and if you sort of read that into the text, that interpretation, that what it's actually, the lament is for the king of Tyre for that time, but in terms of like an eternal perspective, it was a lament over the fall of Satan. If you read it with that interpretation in mind, then you get the idea that Satan was almost like the crown jewel of the angels. Like he was the best and brightest of all of them.
Wasn't he also like the leader of like worship or something?
Well, people say that, but
okay.
That people are pulling.
They're pulling from different places.
Well, they're pulling from that, but they're like grasping at like one specific, like a couple words that mention like pipes, basically. And they think it has to do with music, so they extrapolate from that Satan must have been in charge of worship in heaven. And it's like, that's...
Yeah.
Like,
that's one reason I could see why people don't like multiple translations of the Bible, because it does get super confusing. Like we mentioned with mansions being in King James, but none of the other versions.
Yeah, well,
strange.
Yeah, this is less about translations.
Less, I know.
Less about translations and more about people just kind of like hitting on like a couple of words and then just like going off with a wild tangent off of there, basically. So that's where that idea comes from. But yeah, essentially, but you do kind of get the idea if you're looking at it with the perspective that he's talking about Satan. You do kind of get the idea that Satan was like, the best and brightest of the angels, that he had a special place nearer to the throne of God, that was nearer to the throne of God than the other angels did. And so there's the idea in there specifically that basically he looked upon his own beauty, his own favored position, and from that pride began to grow.
Which is a sin. Well, we can talk about this for a long time, but I think it's just interesting to imagine. So anyway, all right, next. We're almost done. Why did the Kremlin nominate Snarp Fangle as Putin's #1 podcast?
Well, I mean...
Well, Thad, how do you know?
When you've got a viewer as illustrious as Vladimir Putin, he's one of the 50 views we get a week. Things are gonna happen. Yeah, so that's your answer, Thad. What is the difference between God's wrath and his discipline? Well, I think we've actually brought up quite a few examples of discipline.
I think it's argued that Paul's thorn in the side could be interpreted as that. I feel like you could also interpret it. I think you interpret a lot of things of Paul's journey as discipline, in fact, and to change. Or was him being blind God's wrath, and then it taught him a lesson? Or is that just kind of making it a little gray there?
Well, if we take it back to sort of the basic principles of the law, so one of the, I believe it's in Proverbs, where the writer basically implores people to not you've heard the phrase spare the rod, spoil the child.
Yep.
So I believe it's in Proverbs, the writer actually implores people to not spare the rod from their children, because discipline is, because of the value of discipline and the necessary role it plays in shaping good character. So the Bible also talks about God disciplining those whom he loves.
Yeah.
So
I mean, just think of the Israelites and the leaders thereof.
Yeah, well, that's a little bit different.
Is that a little different? Okay.
Because there's definitely some wrath poured out there as well.
At church on Sunday, I was thinking randomly of when Nick was talking about the soul, body, and spirit. I was randomly thinking of when Moses hit the rock and nothing came out, and he's like, and then he hits it again, and then water spews out.
No.
No? Is it twice? He strikes the rock twice.
Well, he strikes the rock.
Yeah,
and then
I thought
water
it was twice.
He strikes the rock, and then water comes out. He was told to touch the rock with his staff, and water would come out.
Yeah, but he struck it instead.
He was pissed off.
Yeah, he was
so
mad.
He hit the rock.
And now I thought when he strikes it the first time, it doesn't happen, and then he does it again, and then it happens. That's what I thought it was.
Well, I mean,
I'm gonna have to look that up.
Yeah, I don't think it might have recorded the detail of him striking the rock twice, but that wasn't the point of the story. There wasn't, the point of the story was that he was told, touch the rock with your staff and water will come out of it.
So Numbers 20:11.
But instead he was really pissed off and he hit the rock, and water still came out of it, but he was later disciplined.
Oh God!
For his little outburst.
God, this website by default uses the message version. Let me keep going to a different version. Let me just go to King James. 20:11. Let's see. Then Moses and Aaron, this is 10. Then Moses and Aaron gathered the congregation together before the rock, and he said unto them, "Hear now, ye rebels, must we fetch you water out of this rock?" And Moses lifted his hand, this is King James, by the way, and with his rod he smote the rock twice, and the water came out abundantly, and the congregation drank, and their beasts also. And then I guess I'll read 12. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron, because ye believed me not, to sanctify me in the eyes of the children of Israel. Therefore ye shall not bring this congregation into the land which I have given them. This is the water of Meribah, because the children of Israel strove with the Lord, and he was sanctified in them. So he did strike it twice. But I think it says beforehand.
Oh, no, never mind. It's not... he didn't tell them to
it's earlier
touch the rock. He told them to speak to the rock.
Oh.
He told them to speak to the rock. So he told them, it's in verse 8.
8. Yeah, I'm reading
Take
here.
the staff, you and your brother Aaron assemble the congregation and speak to the rock before their eyes, that it shall yield its water. So you shall bring water for them out of the rock, and have the congregation and their livestock drink. And Moses was ticked off, so he smacked the rock with his staff instead.
He must have either been super dyslexic, which makes me question the 10 Commandments, or he was just mad. So he was probably just mad. I was joking, by the way, in the first part. Moses the dyslexic. What a dyslexic. I can't believe him.
Well, he did have a stutter.
Oh, that's true. Oh, maybe
He couldn't.
My theory's correct.
He had a stutter or a speech impediment or something that prevented him from being able to speak to people effectively, which is why Aaron had to speak for him when he went before Pharaoh.
Okay. That was a cool little deep dive. All right, 20. Here we go. Define sanctification. Let's do fast with this one. I'm going to say it was the breaking of the veil.
Sanctification?
Yeah. To make something holy.
Sanctification in theological terms is the work over time that happens in us to where our lives become more in line with Christ.
Oh, that's right. It's like a time thing.
So you have justification, which is where we are justified before the Father because of Christ's sacrifice. So we are counted as righteousness. We are imputed with the righteousness of Christ. So that's justification.
Okay.
Then you have sanctification, which is when you walking with God begin to, over time, change the way you live, change the way you think, change the way you act to become who God wants you to be. So it's that daily idea. It's that idea of daily putting off the old man, putting on the new man. That is the process of sanctification. And then that process of sanctification leads to, in eternity, the point at which we reach what's known as glorification, where we'll be finally free of the sinful flesh that we're currently bound to, and will be glorified together with Christ in heaven.
Oh, well, I think that's a lot better than my answer. Thank you, David. Yeah, because I'm like, I don't remember what sanctification is. So I typed in the literal definition. I'm like, to make holy. And I'm like, well, what did Jesus do to make us holy? Well, he died. And I'm like, well, what else happened? Well, the veil. Okay, well, then he broke the veil to make us eventually holy, is where my mind was. So anyway, moving on. Good job, by the way. All right. 2 more questions and then we're finished. Praise the Lord Jesus. Is Donald Trump's hair actually the leader of the Scythian lizard people?
Yeah, that's the one I couldn't figure out.
Yeah, Thad, what are you talking about?
Well, I have no idea.
What is Scythian, not Scythian? Like, what? That doesn't even mean anything either. What are you talking about, Thad? Do you know what the Scythian lizard people are? Do they live in your basement? Do they try to play the Switch when the kids go to sleep? Like, what's happening?
Are the Scythian lizard people with us right now?
Are they with us right now? Are they in the speakers of the desk over there?
Yeah, I don't know. I tried my best, furiously Googling to try and figure out what the heck he might have been talking about. I got nothing.
Is he like, I want to know why it has to do with the hair, because they're like, they blonde lizards or something. Can you imagine a blonde lizard, David?
I mean, maybe the idea that Trump's hair is like some kind of sentient creature that's attached himself to Trump or something. Maybe that's what he was going for.
Yeah, it could be that. Dude, by the way, on Twitter, people are starting to take the clips from the movie The Apprentice, where Sebastian Stan plays Trump, and starting to turn it into like a positive force for Trump. It's really funny. It's real, like those chat edits you'll see. They're starting to do chat edits of The Apprentice. It's really funny.
Oh dear Lord.
And I don't think I'm a fan of it, but it's entertaining to say the least. All right, last question. Number 30. I can't believe this. All right, what is the future vision of Snarp Fangle? And David, I'm going to let you get this one first, and then I'll end it, okay?
I think for me, the future vision of Snarp Fangle is just. I mean, we have some ideas bouncing around, but overall the idea of Snarp Fangle is to continue the conversation.
Yeah.
Because a lot of podcasts are about a topic in particular, and Snarp Fangle is not about any particular topic. It's about the conversation. So whatever topic somebody brings, or whatever topic we think of to talk about if we don't have a guest, what it boils down to is we're trying to have a good conversation.
Yeah.
And so the future of Snarp Fangle is we're going to do what we can to continue the conversation.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Safe Answer. No, I'm joking. The future vision of Snarp Fangle. Well, when we started it, I would say that the goal of it was to get David and me better at the gifts we already had, such as he's good at audio engineering and audio finagling, and I'm good at video engineering and video finagling. And it's really, that was the idea starting out, and also to get us better in front of a microphone.
I mean, like,
that's one of many versions.
To be honest, like when we started off, it was more like you just came to me one day. He's like, "Hey, David, you want to start a podcast?" I'm like, "Sure, why not?"
And then you had a condition about it, like, "Hey, you're gonna host it, though, right?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, I can do that, yeah." And so,
that's what it was. I didn't want. I was cool with being like the co-host of a podcast, but I didn't want to be responsible for the podcast, which is really funny because I ended up being responsible for it anyway.
Yeah, like after I think it was 19 episodes, I was out of the picture for the whole summer, and then you did like I think 8 episodes or 7 episodes, like where you edited it to yourself. You did the thumbnail, did all the audio, and like you usually do. And I was on some of those, but I couldn't finagle my way into editing most of them. So I appreciate your effort, David, and you did really well. And I feel like even if I'm gone this summer, which I probably will, there's going to be some weeks where you're going to have some really good stuff going on.